Hey, this is Josh with Budget Mechanic. Now, a lot of people, when their car doesn't start strong or it dies and they have to be jump started, immediately go out and buy a brand new battery. And the only thing with that is, oftentimes there can be other causes for why your battery is dying, such as your alternator or loose terminals, things like that. And that needs to be tested before you go and spend money on a brand new battery that's just going to die again. Additionally, there's a couple things you can do with your battery to really prolong its life and get a couple more miles out of it. So the owner of this truck is having a hard time starting it in the morning, especially if the truck's been sitting for a couple days. So we need to find out whether it really is a battery problem. So today I'm going to show you what to look for before buying that new battery. And if you get to the end of this video and it was helpful, we would really appreciate a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that alert button. It really helps the channel out. So you're stranded at the grocery store. Your car won't start. You suspect the battery. There's three things you want to check: the age of the battery, if the terminals are tight, and if your alternator is working correctly. So first off, batteries don't last forever. So a normal car battery is going to last 3 to 5 years. So the first thing you want to check is how old the battery actually is. There's a couple different ways that they label batteries. Sometimes they punch out the month and date. And then a lot of manufacturers and retailers now are putting date stickers on, which is really nice. You can find out when this battery was purchased. So if you're within the 3 to 5 year window, the battery should be working okay. 3 to 5 years is just a general rule. If you're in extreme heat or cold, that can affect the life of your battery as well. This battery is only 2.5 years old, so in theory, it should be fine. And so the next thing we're going to check is the terminals. So you just want to give these terminals a spin and see if they turn around the posts. And again, don't worry about getting electrocuted. Car batteries are really safe. We have a video on me trying to get electrocuted by one you can check out. But if these terminals start spinning and getting loose, it'll cause intermittent battery problems, and your car will start one day, it won't start another day, won't get charged properly. It can be a real problem and an easy one to fix. So the terminals on this battery are nice and tight, so that's not our problem. The next thing we want to check is the alternator. Basically, the alternator not only charges the battery, but it runs all the electrical systems in your car when the car is running. So what happens when the alternator begins to fail is it doesn't quite put enough juice back into the battery to charge the battery. So when people have battery problems as a result of the alternator, it is the battery dying, but it's because the alternator is not charging it correctly, which is why if you go and buy a brand new battery, it's only going to last you another 3-4 days of starting it, because then the battery is going to slowly die and die and die. Alternator can't keep up with it, and you're going to have another dead battery problem. So to check the alternator, you get a voltmeter. You can get one of these at any hardware store. You can get it online. Probably 15-20 bucks will get you one. And you want to test the voltage coming into the battery when the car is running. So if you're dead, obviously you're going to have to jump start that battery, get the car running, and you're going to test it at that point. Okay, so once you got the car running, you want to set up your voltmeter, and we're going to turn it to 20 volts DC, which is the solid line with the 3 dashed lines underneath it. Every voltmeter is a little different, but you want to go for like a low DC setting, so like 20 is a good one. So a properly functioning alternator should be putting out around 13 or 14 volts. Anything less than 13, the alternator might not be able to keep up with the demands that the car is putting on the electrical system. Put your red lead positive on the positive and the negative on the negative and see what we got. So this alternator is putting out 12.6, 12.7 volts, which is less than 13, which means that if someone drives this car and uses the air conditioning, the radio, the headlights, anything that draws more power than normal, this alternator is not going to be able to keep up with charging the battery. So this is why this car is having trouble starting in the morning, is because it's not quite getting topped off enough while it's driving around with the alternator. So this is a case where if the owner were to go and buy a brand new battery and put it in here, it would probably function normally for 3-4 days a week, but then it would have trouble starting again and he'd be right back where he started. Another thing a lot of people don't realize is that car batteries are not designed to be drained completely and charged back up. So it actually really negatively affects their overall lifespan when you kill a battery completely. So that's why it's a big deal that you don't want to keep putting batteries in and then having the alternator let them drain down to dead. And then when you go in the morning, you try to start it, completely kills the battery. It actually shortens the life of the battery quite significantly. So now that we know the alternator is bad, I'm going to really quick check the battery itself. And you can't really use the voltmeter that you tested the alternator with because it may tell you 12 volts, which is what a battery should read, but it doesn't tell you what the battery will do under load. So I have a load tester. Now you're not going to have a load tester lying around, but a lot of shops and auto parts stores will offer free battery testing and even free alternator checks. So if you're not going to get the tools yourself, at least go and take your car into one of those places, get them to check things out before you go and buy a new battery, which simulates when the car is under heavy load, like when the starter motor is running. And I can hit a button and it still reads 10.5 volts in the good range. So I know this battery is actually okay. So despite having battery symptoms, what turns out is that this battery is fine and the alternator is failing. So I just want to show you a couple things you can do to prolong the life of your battery, keep it running strong. We already kind of talked about the terminals. You want to make sure those are always tight, clean. If you see a lot of corrosion happening, the fluffy oxidization, you want to keep that clean. But then something that not a lot of people do anymore is actually checking and maintaining the water level in your battery. So in a lead acid battery, there's water over the different elements, and when the water dries up, the battery stops functioning as strong. So just like the label says on here, make sure you're wearing some safety glasses because there's acid in here. You don't want that in your eye. Basically, every battery is a little different, but you're going to find the ports where you inspect and add water. In my case, it's going to be underneath this label. Okay, so you're looking down these holes, and what you should see is the surface of the water, and under the water is these metal fins. What you don't want to see is the metal fins sticking up above the water. That means you need to add more distilled water to your battery, so it should just cover that metal. You want to check each one of these compartments individually and make sure that they're all filled up enough. You don't need to put a ton. It would just be a matter of a couple tablespoons, and you want to use distilled water and just make sure that those metal elements are covered in water. So as we saw with this truck, it's always best to check your alternator before you go out and buy a new battery. Hey, I hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.